thank you all for coming in here tonight. I am Joff Pedretti, and I'm the person that does this 10 years to $10,000 an hour. And I'll kind of get into why it's called that. And today specifically, we're talking about our the deep dive on this 24-unit purchase I did. However, I'm going to back up a little further because I think for most people in the room, you're thinking, oh, 24-unit apartment. I'd never be purchasing that. I would say even 2-3 years back, I would have not envisioned that. So I think, you know, as you see the progress, you'll see, oh, really anybody that starts on this path, if they stay in it long enough and keep pursuing, they could eventually end up there. So I'm going to screen share. All right. So now we just got to figure out how to. So the first thing is I always go through the disclaimers here. So, you know, I'm a licensed real estate agent who has bought and sold investment property. And I'm going to share my experiences with you. However, I'm not a legal professional. So if you need legal advice, please consult an attorney. I'm also not an accountant. So if you need accounting, seek a CPA. And I am not a financial advisor. So if you're looking for someone to help you put together a financial portfolio, seek out a financial planner. Okay, so we got that out. And then the more, you know, real estate investing is a get rich slow game. The first one of these I did, I had over 50 people in the room. And then I think, you know, after I said that, I think a lot of people were like, oh, I was hoping for like this really instant, just money, you know, raining from the skies. And it's not like that. I think that's what a lot of people envision, because what's out there on social media is, you know, here I am on the beach, enjoying my life. And, you know, it takes time to get there though. The benefits are not immediate. They do take time to develop. And there's usually a snowball effect. And what I like to think about it is like when you purchase your first rental property, it's like building the base of a snowman, where, you know, you pack up a snowball, you put it on the ground, you're rolling it, and you know, it gets, you know, you get to a certain point though, and you get to the edge of the hill, and you just like let it roll off and it starts working on its own. And then you pack up another one, you start doing the same thing. So it's like when you get to that point where you have multiple snowballs rolling down off the hill and you're not doing the work anymore, that's when you really hit that spot of really feeling like you're a real estate investor at that point. And it does get easier. It's just, it's not quite so easy right out of the gates as people would like to think. So why am I doing this? So investment real estate has changed my life, and this is just a way for me to give back. There's a lot of people that would make you pay you know, a decent amount of money to be in a seminar like this. But from my experience, most real estate investors have some way in which they want to give back, either to their family or their community, or, you know, something that's important to them. And by sharing what I know, it allows you and other people to do good things for other people. And I don't want to hinder that by charging for that. Yeah, and so I've got that on here. What I've been working for those of you that already know, I've got an Opportunity 2020 scholarship. I've already given $34,000 of scholarships in the last 3 years. The goal is to eventually get that to a full ride scholarship every year is the goal. So that's what we're working for. Because the original goal was that I would equal my teaching salary. Uh-oh. You gonna coming back here? Or off the screen? I'm still seeing something, but eventually the goal is to have that full ride scholarship. When I originally started, it was just to equal my teaching salary and passive income, and then once I achieved that ahead of schedule, I was like, okay, what else could I do? So, okay, so how did I come up with the name of the class? So income of a real estate investor, this was kind of my path. So 2011, I purchased one rental property. It was making $7,000 a year. I was putting in about 40 hours a year, about 3 hours a month, $175 an hour. So not too bad. Most people would take that. So then when I sold that and I did a 1031 exchange to purchase 2 properties, so now they were each 2 units. Now I'm up to $20,000 a year. Of course, more time now, so I'm up to about 6.5 hours a month, $250 an hour. And you'll see as I progressed and kept getting more properties, the income went up. So did the hours and the dollar per hour. But you can see it's plateauing. Now the 2020, that's the hypothetical, because I bought an 8-unit apartment that year. Had I managed it myself, that's the cash flow I would have had. That's the amount of hours I would have had. I basically would have had a part-time job at that point at 21 hours a month. And then, of course, it's not possible at some months, because if you're really looking at it, some months, if you're doing enough turnovers, like even when I had 4 properties, there was one year I probably put in like an 80, 90-hour week, just on all the turnovers. And like, obviously that's not sustainable. So what actually happened in 2020 is I hired a property manager in addition to accumulating that last property. And so by doing that, by having somebody else take over those responsibilities, my dollar per hour shot up dramatically. I went from 320 an hour to about about 6,000 an hour. And so how I broke down my time is, well, I'm still doing a check-in call every month, 15 minutes, still did a walkthrough of all the properties twice a year. And I still, stuff comes up, would have to take a call, would have to handle something somewhere, and that would take up some of my time. And so that's how I kind of came up with that. So, 2021, I was somewhere in the middle of that. I was at 31 units, but I'm just saying, hey, 40 financed units or 20 units with no financing with a property manager, $120K a year. I was actually at 31 units, 120K a year, 12 hours a year, 10,000 an hour. So that was my progression from 10 years to 10K an hour. So anyways, so now you know why I call the series that. And then I'm not going to go too deep into this, but this was basically, this is everything that I've purchased. Everything in asterisks has since been sold. I don't own it anymore. So 911 Delaplane, I sold that to a developer. There's actually a high-rise apartment in that location now. And then 2512 Valley Street, I sold earlier this year. That was the 1031 exchange to purchase the 24 units. So that is kind of the progression there. And so this is where I want to talk about kind of the lead up to that 24 unit purchase. So there's 2 paths that kind of come together here. The first is this direct path where I'm very intentional about investment property. So in 2011, at this time, I was an elementary physical education teacher. There was a lot of stuff happening in politics at that time that were not very pro-teacher. So I started kind of looking for a way to diversify my income. So at that point, 100% of my income came from the school district, and I was looking for some other source of income. And I've always been a saver by nature. I had a decent amount saved up. I had purchased my own personal residence back in 2004, and now it's 7 years later, I've saved up enough that I have enough for a $40K down payment. And if, in case you didn't know, the market was not very good at that time. Things I was able to negotiate a really good price. Things were on the market quite some time, and so yeah, I purchased 911 Delaplane for $40K down. Fast forward 4 years, and now I'm selling it for $290,000, and I'm taking 130 of equity for another purchase. So the 130K of equity, if you want to break it down, 80K is is how much more it was worth. 10,000 was how much my principal got paid down during those 4 years, and then 40,000 was my original down payment. So I'm taking that 130K of equity, and I purchase two units with that for 610,000, and I've got about 240K of debt on each. So then fast forward another 6 years, and these two properties are worth quite a bit more now. They're worth over 800,000 according to the appraiser that came out to look at them. And now my debt is down to 190K on each. So I'm able to do a cash out refinance, which is not taxed. And I'm able to pull $260,000 out of those two properties. So this was kind of, like I said, this is the intentional path. This is how I came up with this is part of the picture. All right, so here's the other part of the picture. This is the less direct path. Going back to when I bought my condo in 2004, that was not an awesome time to buy. At the time, we thought it was a fine time to buy, except for 4 years later, the market started going down. So I put 20% down, so it was about a 30K down payment on a 160K condo. And so I owned it for 14 years. And during that time, at one point, they were selling for as low as 110,000. So I would have taken a pretty substantial loss had I sold it at the low point. Eventually, it climbed back up to the point it was worth more than what I bought it for, thankfully. And I walked away with 130K on that. So the way that worked out is 20K improved value, 90K of debt payoff. So that's where, like, anybody that's concerned about purchasing now and is worried about, oh, what if the market goes down, which, one, I think it's unlikely in this area. Two, even if it did, if you ride it out, I mean, look at how I came out. I stayed in there long enough that, yeah, I only sold for 20K more than what I bought it for. At the same time, though, I paid off the debt by 90K. I was in that much better of a cash position. Had I rented that whole time, I would have not had that. And then, of course, minus 10K because even though I was an agent at the time and I listed, I still had to pay a buyer's agent. There's still some closing costs and some other things. So I lost 10K there. So I walked away with 130K. So then 2018 to 2020, I've got 4 rental properties. I'm making about 35K a year in cash flow on those rental properties. So, and I'm not I'm not, a lot of people think, oh, okay, well, now I'm making $10,000 more, $20,000 more. I'm going to improve my lifestyle by $10,000 or $20,000 a year. I just kind of kept living the same lifestyle. Even though I was a teacher, I was making my teaching salary. By the time I stopped teaching, I was making 2/3 my teaching salary with the rental properties too. So it was almost like it was better than a salary and a half. That's kind of how that all shook out. So I don't change my lifestyle. So I'm just flat out saving this money. I'm not buying expensive stuff. I'm not doing expensive things. I'm just saving it, which takes discipline. And some people don't have that. And that's another thing people don't like to hear at these things is like, oh, I got to have financial discipline. Yeah. In order to keep going. So, yeah, 2020, I basically take the, because that money was that 130 was just kind of sitting in the bank for a couple of years. I wasn't really doing anything with it. So that plus the cash flow, all of a sudden I'm at about 230K in the bank. And I'm like, okay, well, here comes this good opportunity. There's this 2-unit halfway through 2020. It's been on the market for 180 days. I tried to convince several clients to go see it. They were like, oh, it doesn't look good on the photos, yada, yada, yada. And eventually I'm like, okay, I've tried to convince several people to see it. Maybe I should go see it. So I went and saw it. And there were a lot of problems with the property, but overall the units were good. And I knew I could improve the rents quite a bit. And all the issues were things I knew I could fix. It would just cost money. So like knob and tube wiring, you know, for the electrical, vermiculite insulation in the attic, standing water in parts of the basement. I was just looking at it like, okay, 3,000 there, 5,000 there, 8,000 there. And, you know, and so that's how I did my offer. So I buy it for 200,000, spend another 30K on it. And probably 6 months later, I get it appraised, and it appraises at 315. So the bank lets me pull out 250K. So not only do I get my 230 back, I got an additional 20K bump on that. Okay, so now this is where everything kind of comes together. That cash out refinance that I was talking about. So remember that path that I had on the first slide, that cash out refinance of 260, and there was some years that went into that, plus now that 250 cash out refinance, plus 40K from savings. And I made a cash purchase on an 8-unit on Valley Street for 550K. And I got it at a pretty good price. It was off market. Seller had an offer. I made a little bit better offer and got it accepted. So 2 years later, I've substantially improved the rents. I remodeled one of the units to kind of show what it could be. And I'm putting it on the market for 850, ended up selling it for 875. After, again, I had it on the market. There was a buyer's agent involved, closing costs, 1031 fees. So I walked away with 835, which is enough for 528K down payment on Lake Point Drive, plus 300 cash out refinance to do all the improvements and updates on the property. So yeah, it was about a 2.6 and change $1 million property. And that was, and that basically that's how everything's set up. So, any questions on that piece? Yeah.
What property? Did you pay cash for that, or how did you do it?
So yeah, so that one, just kind of going back to that was my first cash purchase. And basically the money from that came from the fact that I had this condo sale. I moved in with my fiance, and so I just basically took the lump sum and just held on to it. So say that again.
When you pulled the equity out of it, just pulled everything you could out of it to purchase the next property.
Yeah, so basically that was the whole goal, was to see if I could burr it, because yeah, I mean, 2020 was a really interesting time. The market was really competitive in the residential market. In the investment property market, it was really odd. Like there were some things that were still really competitive, but there was other things that just were sitting. And a lot of investors were nervous because there was so much going on. There were people not paying rent in certain properties. I had that going on. The way I was looking at it was this, hey, it's a little experiment here. Like how bad can this go? Worst case scenario, it appraises at, because even when it was on the market at 230, I remember thinking, boy, something over in that area, 2-unit in that area, that should be like probably 250 to 270. Why is it at 230? And if it's at 230, why is it not selling? But there was some marketing issues in the property. The person who owned it could have done more with it and chose not to, and that scared off certain people. And then people who are in better cash positions are typically looking for more expensive properties. They're looking for bigger properties. And there was another colleague agent who also does the same type of thing. He does sales and invests, and he got a pretty good deal on a pretty small building. So I'm like, okay, I got to start paying attention to what's going on. And then that's how that one worked out. So yeah, so it appraised at 315. I was able to pull 250 out. And so basically I got the 230 back and then some. And it just kind of, the timing all worked out because on the backside, I had appraisals done on the 2 properties on East Mifflin just to see how much I could pull out. It was just kind of, and then basically when this when this 8 unit came along at 550, it was just like, oh, I had this money ready to come my way. I had this money and I just had to just tell the lender, do it. And then it just happened all pretty quickly. So, so yeah, so that's how that one came together. Any other questions on that piece of things? The big takeaway I want to show you there is just, this wasn't like, hey, Joff, all of a sudden came up with, 528K for a down payment out of thin air and bought a 24 unit. That was continuing to buy rental property and just property in general over the course of years, and allowing the appreciation of the assets to purchase the property. You get to a certain point where the equity in properties you own are paying for the property, but it doesn't happen until you own multiple properties. Okay, so this is where I'm going to get into the spreadsheet. Can you guys still see this okay?
Yeah.
And you can see it too? Okay. So this is like really small. I'm going to try to blow it up so it's easier to read. And I'll just kind of go through it. Is that better? Can you see that okay? Okay. So Lake Point Drive, how I came across this deal. I wasn't, if you looked at that whole progress, 2020 was a really good year for me. I went from 9 units to 19 units. I basically doubled my portfolio that year. I was able to do that because 2018, I got my license so that I could purchase properties for myself. I didn't intend to make a career out of this. However, lucky coincidence, it did end up turning into a career, and it ended up working out pretty well for me. I got so wrapped up with helping other people buy and sell houses that I just really didn't take the time, or couldn't take the time. I didn't have enough time to look for deals for myself. So 2018, 2019, didn't purchase anything for those 2 years. And then in 2020, I'm like, okay, I gotta get going with this and start, focusing on it. And then when I did, I purchased that 8 unit on the west side, and then I also did that burr later that year in the summertime. So so with 2021, the only thing I bought was that 8 unit on Valley Street, and in 2022, I bought a 4 unit Verona, and that was it. And I remember thinking like, oh man, I was really hoping to double my portfolio again, and I didn't do that. And I feel like, I was not doing a good job, so I had to do something different. So I sent out $3,000 worth of mailers and just committed to that and just said, okay, let's see what happens. And interestingly enough, the first round goes out. So so I've already paid for 3,000, but it goes out in stages. So the first $1,000 of mailers goes out, and I only got 2 calls. And one of the 2 calls was take me off your list. And the other call was the seller of this Lake Point Drive apartment. Basically he calls me and because the way it was supposed to go out, it was supposed to go to 2 to 4 unit property owners. And I can't remember all the rest of the criteria, but he actually owned 4 side-by-side 4 units plus an 8 unit on the corner lot. So it was basically is basically a city block in Verona, in Madison. And so when we were talking, he's giving me the details, and eventually I just say, well, what price are you talking about? And we had some back and forth on that, but he eventually kind of gave me a range of like 2.6 to $2.9 million. And I was like, okay. Actually, I think initially it was like 2.5 to $2.9 million. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try to get this on the lower end of that, obviously. And so I think I just initially ran my numbers at 2.6. And then just to see, is this even make sense, right? So for those of you that have been to these before, this is the spreadsheet I use. It's not very complex. I think there's definitely way more complicated spreadsheets, but I think that can sometimes lead to analysis paralysis. And I'm more of a, like to take action type of person. This also makes it very easy to compare properties with each other or compare different scenarios with each other. This has changed over the years. And you'll even see as I get a little bit further on that I tweak the spreadsheet a little bit. But so Lake Point Drive, plugged in the 2.6, 24 units. Most of them were 2 bed, 1 bath. One building was 3 bed, 1 bath. I guess the 8 units are 2 bed, 1.5 bath. The annual rent that they were currently getting was $22,400 a month. The proposed rent, they've said, oh, we think the market rent would be $27,900. I mean, I'm not going to give you all the details on that. That's the added total of all the units together. So then from there, you got the annual rent totals. Vacancy rate is based off 3%. The current vacancy rate in Madison is about 2.6%. So I just round up to 3. First year expenses. So that's like, hey, how much am I going to probably spend on this property in the first year? Because that affects your cash on cash return. It's because you have a down payment plus whatever you're going to spend on the property in the first year. So based on whatever percentage you put in here, it auto populates the down payment, the loan amount, and the mortgage is calculated off of these 2 items. So at the time, the lender quoted me at 7.06. I just closed on another deal a month earlier at 7.06. So I had every reason to think it would be the same. Typically, when you do commercial property, it's a 25-year amortization for those of you that haven't done that yet. It's usually a 5-year term, but it can be a 3-year term. It can be a 7-year term. I mean, like commercial, it's flexible because unlike a 30-year fixed, which is backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, a government program, what they do with these commercial loans, they're in-house. They're not selling it off to somebody else. It doesn't have to. So it's kind of whatever the bank will do for you. Plugged in the property tax, plugged in what the likely future property tax would look like, because obviously I'm buying it well above the assessed value. Insurance, annual maintenance costs, estimated expenses for electricity, gas, water, sewer, lawn, snow, other, which is, like dumpster type fee kind of thing. Property management. So yeah, so I'm plugging this all in. These were the numbers I estimated after looking at their spreadsheet of actual expenses that they were getting. This is how theirs came out. So remember, in order to purchase this, I got to sell a property that last year in 2022 had a net profit after all expenses. So property taxes, insurance, maintenance, everything, everything was $44,000. So I'm going to sell a property that it had no financing and gave me 44K. And, so does it make sense to buy this? Well, right now, not yet, but I haven't seen the property yet. And, based on this metric, well, it's going to lose a lot of money in the first year, but when I get the rents up to market, so I wanted to see it. So I go and see it, and I take my property manager with me, and lo and behold, my property manager's like, hey, I think we can crush their projected rent numbers. So I think we're going to be actually closer to these rents. So I plug that in, and now I'm looking at it, kind of, again, with my numbers and their numbers, because, for property management, I mean, they just had somebody who lived in the building essentially assisting with property management duties. So they didn't have to pay as high of rate as they did with a professional property manager. And I wasn't sure if that was going to work for me or not. So now plugging this in, oh, okay, well, now we could potentially be equal or more profitable than what the current property is doing. Plus, the other bonus is, if I go from 1 property to, this would be 5 properties, I have 5 appreciating assets instead of just 1 appreciating asset. And this is the cash flow with property management. And this is the cash on cash return. Just some other stuff that is in here. So this is self-managed versus property managed. Obviously, at this scale, you would likely hire a property manager. Gross rent multiplier, which is essentially just taking the purchase price divided by the annual rent amount, you know, cap rate, cost per door. You know, if I won the lottery and paid off all the debt, how much does it make per year with all those expenses? That's how this is kind of calculating out. So I'm still interested at this point. This is also the point in which they say, yeah, 2.5 is not going to work for us. I mean, so now they're already like raising the low end of the bar. Like it's got to be 2.6 to 2.9. And so I'm like, okay, how am I going to, you know, do this? So anyways, so my actual offer. So one thing that went negative in the time that I'm doing all this due diligence, the interest rate went up to 7.31. So that was not awesome. However, the bank was willing to cut me a break on the first year and do interest only payments. So the downside is you have no principal, but the upside is you're going to have better cash flow for the first 12 months by doing that. And they knew that because they knew I'd probably like that because the rents, it was so under rented that I was going to be losing money. So this way I'm just losing less money when I'm coming into it. So yeah, I basically, I mean, if you look at this part, this is where I broke it down, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, and then how did the numbers look? And then basically what I did, I'm trying to think what I, just trying to see here, insurance. So yeah, at this point I was already in conversation with their insurance company, seeing like if I could get this rate. Cause like, you know, that's, you know, it's over, you know, it's over $4,000. So, you know, whatever I can do to be a significant impact, but I left it on here. I left it on this spreadsheet the way I did it, but that's why you see all these columns is I'm basically just running, you know, current rent, their projected rent, and what my property manager believes that I can get it at or get the rents to. And I'm just running that scenario at each 100K increment. Ultimately, it didn't really work at 2.7 or higher. It did work at 2.6, but I'm like, oh, okay, if I could do 2.6, I mean, like, you know, so what I did is I kind of got the sense that they wanted to walk away with this with about $1.5 million. And I figured out like how much debt they had left, what their prepayment penalty was going to be for on their loan if they were to sell, if they were going to sell it that year. And I just kind of how much they were going to put into the property in the 2 to 3 months before we closed. And I just kind of calculated that all in. I said, okay, I basically to make them walk away with 1.5, probably got to come up another 42K. And yeah, and they accepted. So that's how it all shook out. So I'm gonna just kind of see here. So for the first year, this is what it looks like, at least, you know, at time of closing. Now, the reason I don't put the 31,800 down here is because in the first year, I won't hit that number. It's going to take me probably 12 to 14 months to hit that number. So basically it's how fast can I get, you know, to their projected rents, knowing that I've got interest only payments. So I'm saving about $3,000 a month per month on the payments. We also, another thing that we do at a lot of our properties is we will, you know, it's not separately metered, but we have ways to have the tenants pay for water, whether we, you know, let's say it's a 4-unit, whether we split it 4 ways or whether we put like a per person water fee. We'll do something to offset and reduce or eliminate the water sewer bill. So we obviously did that. So basically, if you look at that, if we can get to the market rents that were proposed to us by the seller before the end of the year, we'll already be, you know, relatively profitable. And I remember this is an annual, all right, and that's already better than what my other property was producing because that was at 44,000 a year. But initially it's losing money. So it's negatively cash flowing until I can get the rents closer to this mark. So then looking ahead to next year, obviously we hope we're at least here by the 12-month mark. And ideally we're here at the rents that my property manager thinks that we can do. So if we do that and just doing some of these savings type methods, okay, now, you know, we're here and possibly here, which would put us ahead of where we were at with the 8 unit that was netting $44K a year. So that was kind of how we were looking at it at the time that I wrote the offer, is like, okay, this is going to be, even despite the interest rate, this is going to move me in the right direction. Okay. So any questions with any of that so far? Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, we'll start back here.
So this, those numbers are pretty easy to understand. My concern is about how did you get all this information? Is the seller providing you all the data, or
yeah,
that's the main thing about, you know, getting those numbers work for you.
So remember, and I'll back up a little bit. I'll back up to this sheet here, because this is the one where I'm putting my estimates based on my experience of owning similar properties, what this is going to be. All right. And then they've got theirs. So when I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, I think it's going to be like 17K for insurance. They're getting 12, you know, 600. Okay, I'm going to call their insurance agent and see if they'd be willing to, you know, continue to insure at that same price with me. And at first she wasn't sure, but then, yeah, as not at this time, but eventually as we got approached closing, she was like, yeah, we can do that. I'm like, great. Their estimated maintenance actually came in higher than what, or their actual maintenance, because I'm looking right at their, you know, like they're giving me a professional rent roll. Like, I mean, it was very detailed and itemized. So I'm just going to the bottom number, and I'm like, okay, they're actually higher on annual maintenance than I would have predicted, but not by a lot, but it tells me that they're probably about right. Now this property manager one, again, I already knew, well, the reason they're saving is because they just have somebody who's living in the building doing some of the tasks, and they're doing the rest of the tasks. You know, like they were doing all of the data, but they had somebody, you know, collecting the checks, sending the checks in, showing the property, getting leases signed, all that kind of stuff. So then electric, gas, water, sewer, you know, my estimates were pretty close to, actually they were identical, which like threw me off so much that I think I might have called MG&E to double check and make sure that that was accurate.
Because you got 3,000, I got 23,000.
Well, they put it in one big clump. They just put utilities, and I separated it out based on just kind of knowing what I know. Yeah, their snow removal was actually pretty darn close. Their dumpster fee was actually pretty close. So I felt pretty good that their numbers were coming in pretty close to my numbers.
So for example, for lawn and snow removal, how you calculate it?
I'm really just thinking of other properties I own and how much it cost last year. And then I'm just like, okay, well, this one is, you know, basically like my 8 unit on the west side, except for you're going to have, you know, it's just more properties. So it's just going to cost, it's probably going to be, you know, it's probably going to be double. It's probably going to be double of it.
For a parking stall?
No, because it depends on the drive, like the length of the driveway matters. How big the parking lot is matters. How many sidewalks you have. Like, because, you know, almost all properties have like a sidewalk on the, you know, by the road, but some will also have like a walking path from, like, you know, from the parking lot to the door, and maybe some don't, you know, maybe some it's like the parking lot and the door are right there, you know, so it just depends.
Did you work with the same lending institution your whole time then?
Yeah, so almost all my,
seen how you kept building.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. Like if somebody who had never, so let's just say somebody that had, you know, 550K to invest, who has never purchased a rental property before, went to the same lender and tried to get this to happen, they probably wouldn't do it. Because I've purchased property in the past that doesn't look like it's going to make sense, and then a year later it's profitable, and I've done it so many times, this lender basically is just like, yeah, yeah. Now Joff's just doing what he's.
Someone coming with some money, they'll turn it down.
Yeah, they make them put more. They'd be like, oh, this seems like a risk. Like, you know.
That's a significant amount of money if someone wants to come.
Yeah, but they don't want to, like, you got to understand, like, lenders want to take zero, or like lenders, insurance agents, they want to take like no risk. Like they want it to work out. They don't want to take it back. I mean, you know, so that, and if they do, they want to be set up really nicely. So if somebody else came in with no experience that was trying to do this, they would probably do it, but they'd probably say, yeah, you got to come down with like 30% down, or you got to come down with like 40% down. They want more skin in the game, and they want to have less exposure. You know,
in other words, it's best to build the portfolio.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, and have good relationships, you know, so, you know, maybe I'm not, you know, like, you know, maybe it's not a good idea that I typically work with one lender, you know, cause, you know, I know a bunch of other investors, they work with 2 or 3, you know, that way, if this person's not giving them quite what they want, they'll go over here. But, you know, I work with, you know, Bank of Prairie du Sac, and I've been really happy with what they do. They don't have the lowest rate for commercial lending, but they're not way far away from it. And their flexibility is way more than anybody else I'm seeing in town. You know, so I don't know if anybody else is here is a lender from somewhere else and wants to, you know, disagree with me on that. I really like what they have offered me in the past. So
it seems like you mentioned to me once, Oregon Community Bank.
So one community bank, I still have one loan with them. Yeah, at one point, I don't know if their practices have changed. Yeah, at one point they were also offering some really flexible options, but over time, the options seem to become a little bit less flexible, and so I changed.
One community bank, not Oregon.
Well, they got bought. Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, changed names. Yeah. Okay, so yeah.
So you know, let's say by charging water, sewer to them as a different fee, and then we got same insurance company up the rents, and then made up.
Well, I haven't upped the rents. Well, I have very recently, but like it was all this is all projection at this point. Yeah.
And then technically you got a little bit more because you don't have a property manager if you did anything, right?
So yeah, so with not having, I mean, essentially that person is getting like an insane deal on their rent, and they will continue to until the end of their lease. You know, but yeah, I wanted to bring in my property manager who I've worked with on all my other properties, so that's kind of how that all shook out. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the last step, because now we actually closed on the property, and now we're starting to see some other things here. So what I've got here is, and I'm trying to remember. So what I've got here is we actually discovered some other potential, you know, we weren't really thinking about it at the time we were making the offer, but after the offer, we're like, oh, hey, these 3-bedroom units, let's see if we can get, well, before the offer, my property manager told me flat, you're not going to make any more on these 3-bedroom units because these are about the same size as the 2-bedroom. And I think I just see we're going to get the same rent here. We're not going to get any better. However, we had a vacancy. We had one of the remodels that they were just finishing was wrapping up. And I said, hey, get this on your website and put it up for $1,400 a month and just see what happens. And we had applicants, and he got it filled at $100 more a month than we thought. So we got one building. We're going to make $100 more a month than we expected. So now we've got $400 more income coming in that way. Also, there is coin-op laundry, and we weren't really factoring that in because it's like one of those services where you have where they collect it and then they just send you a check for the cut. And then just kind of figuring out a little bit more about that, we're like, oh, hey, we're going to make probably another $100 a month off of that too. And then we do have garage stalls, which currently they don't charge anything additional for. But we thought, hey, we could probably start charging additional expense for the 4 garage stalls that are behind one of the buildings. So, so yeah, another $620. So plug that in. So, you know, obviously some of it's rent, some of it's other income. That's where I'm like, that's probably the next update to the spreadsheet is I'll start doing, you know, kind of separating that out. So now, you know, ARV, so like if you go back to even the offer, so ARV is something I can consider now because I'm like, hey, how much more valuable? Because I used to be 100% focused on cash flow. And that's the thing is I talk to people who want to start investing now. They're like, boy, nothing cash flows. I'm like, well, it depends on how you look at it. Almost nothing cash flows with a 20% down payment and current prices and current interest rates. You are correct. But if you put 50% down, it would cash flow. If you paid cash, it would definitely cash flow. You know, there's no way it negatively cash flows unless your rents are crazy low. If you own it outright. So and I talked about that in a different one of these sessions where I talked about investing in challenging times. Because at one point, I'll even look at this one here, projected cash on cash return, 6.8. I used to target a 15% or higher. That was the target. If it didn't hit 15% or higher, I wouldn't buy it. So here I am last year buying something that was, I think 8%. And this is on projected, not current. You know, so I was never looking at the current. It could lose money currently as long as I could get it to hit 15% or higher on the next rent cycle. So by next year. And then I changed my criteria completely because when I look back now, where was all the money? Where did I really gain momentum in real estate investing? It was the equity. That's how I bought the 24 unit. It was the equity from owning all these properties that gained value over time. And that's exactly how this goes too. So I thought if I can get the rents up to this, then I'm looking at when I'm done with the finished product, I've got a $3.6 million property here. Okay. So now we close it and I still have all these things here. So how do I think this? Okay. So let's just say I do all these improvements and I put it on the market this upcoming summer. Okay. I get the rents up. It takes me 12 months to get the rents up to the projected. The buildings are completely done. Now it'll likely take a little bit longer than that, but let's just use that for the sake. So we'll just use this one for right now. We'll put in for the asking price. We'll do both of these. So just kind of flip down this way, like, okay, so this is somebody buying it from me after I get the rents to these 2 levels. So just kind of flip forward. In Madison, for those of you that don't know, cap rate is kind of a little bit more complex version of the gross rent multiplier. Gross rent multiplier is simply just the purchase price divided by an annual rent. Cap rate also factors in expenses. So it's actually taking away the annual rent. It's subtracting property manager fees, vacancy, your utilities, maintenance costs, all that gets factored in. And in Madison, a lot of stuff sells between a 5 to 6% cap rate. All right. So conservatively, you'd think, okay, well, if most stuff sells around that, you know, how hard or easy would it be to sell at about a 6.5% cap rate? So just kind of, I'm just kind of showing how I come up with how I think it could be worth this. So if I get the rents up to what my property manager originally thought, and we're able to cut those expenses like, you know, like we were thinking, you know, I've got, you know, I go from buying a 2.6 and change to having a $3.6 million property that I can sell at a cap rate of 6.8. That would likely sell for that price, you know, unless obviously the market could change and things could change, but based on what we've been seeing the last couple of years. So if I could get the rents and total income up to that number that now we believe we can get based off of, you know, some of these things that we're seeing post-closing, do we potentially have a $3.8 million property? And that puts us at a 6.5 cap. So yeah, I do believe that if we get up to this mark, whether it happens this summer or potentially the next summer, that we're looking at that. So, you know, what's, you know, so what if I was splitting hairs about, you know, hey, I'm going to make this, so if I'm splitting hairs about, I'm just going to put that back, you know, oh, my other building, you know, was cash flowing 44K, might even cash flow 50K. You know, this seems like a lot of work, expense, everything else to bump up to about 60K. And typically I'm buying things at 15% cash on cash. So let's say I kept my mindset that I had all the way up till the end of 2021. Well, it's not going to hit 15%. I'm going to pass on this. Well, look at what I potentially gained. I sold a property and I used 2/3 of it as the down payment. And I'm essentially using 1/3 of it to fund the 300K rehab so I can improve the property and improve the rents. I'm going to go for something I bought in 2.6 up to 3.8 in 1 year. So that's like, basically I take, you know, collectively it's about 850K. So about 850K investment to get 100K of equity, or to get $1 million of equity, plus actually a little over $1 million of equity in 1 year. Well, that's 100%. I mean, it's actually 155%. If I can get it there, that's 155% return on the equity. Well, who wouldn't do that? You know, so that's how this one starts to become a good deal. But there's so many people right now focused solely on the cash flow that they're like, well, with the interest rate right now, nothing's cash flowing. So I'm going to sit on the sidelines. Good. Because that's how people like myself can find deals like this and make it work. So, and I don't know about you, but you know, one purchase and one sale to walk away with $1 million in 12 months. I think most people would do that. So to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing with the properties, if I can, oops, let's see if I can get out of this. I know this is going to show up really small because this is like cell phone. I'm going to show you the before and after of the properties. I know this is kind of tiny, so I apologize for that. It's just like I have a phone, but this is the before of one of the units. And it's hard to see, but like the carpet's in super bad shape. The flooring's in really bad shape, really dark cabinets.
And this the two.
This is actually one of the 3 bedrooms. You can see how gross like the walls are. You got like the nice here, let me, before I answer that question, you got the nice like 60 style bathroom here.
And you bought that for how much?
So 2,642,000.
And that's 24 units, right?
Yep. Yeah, and they're not all like that, but that's, oh shoot. I don't know if I can, I don't know how I can, I don't know why this one's doing this. On my phone, obviously it doesn't do that, so I don't know. Maybe I'll try it again. Oh shoot. Well, you're gonna have to like turn your head sideways. I apologize. But now we got vinyl plank flooring, new doors, new white trim, shaker cabinets, stainless steel appliances.
Oh, you must have had your phone like this.
No, it shows up fine everywhere else. I don't know why. But yeah, new carpet in the bedrooms. and the new bathroom.
Wow, wow.
You have your own people.
So this is another thing that was awesome about this property is in addition to having like an on-site property manager that they also had like an on-site maintenance person, and he does all this. So he's doing the work.
They do like what?
Yeah, so he gets a really good deal on rent, and like I get a pretty good deal on the per hour.
That's one of the secrets
You know.
of success right there.
So, however, we know that coming in the spring, we're gonna have to start doing probably 2 of these at a time. So I'll have my property manager do 1 unit while my in-house maintenance person is doing the other unit. And so we'll be able to do 2 at a time. But that's how you take, you know, and some would say, Joff, you might have, you know, a little bit overpaid based on the condition, but I just know, well, I can make it work with the money for that. So
Joff, I noticed the rents, you raised the rents about 50%. By, saw that correct?
well, so some of those 2-bedroom units, they're renting at like $800, $900 a month,
Yeah.
you know, for
Yeah, yeah.
8 minutes from the Capitol Square, you know, so I just,
With the remodel, you raised it.
oh yeah, yeah.
They were that.
So this was the one, yeah, this was the one that we thought we could get to 1,300, but we ended up getting 1,500. Yeah,
How do you
or
manage-
1,400, excuse me.
How do you manage that with people who actually live in there? So can you raise the rent?
It depends on the lease. So like there's some people that have leases that go until the end of March, the end of June, the end of July. So obviously those you can do. But as we were under contract, I just told them, I said, anybody that has a lease coming up, just don't re-sign them, and then they automatically flip to month. And so the first 3 months that we owned it, we didn't do anything. We just were just like, let's just kind of see, you know, is anybody creating any problems? Is there anybody we really, really like? Like, you know, and we got 3 months in, we're like, okay, all the tenants seem pretty decent, you know, that are here. So let's, the month-to-month folks, let's move them in the direction that we want to go. So for some people, it was, you know, a small $50 a month increase. It was barely anything. But for like one group, it was like $200 a month. For another group, it was like $300 a month. You know,
You have people that say, gee,
we've had one person, but I don't think it was because of the rent increase. I think it was, you know, his work's on the other side of town and he just started looking for other places on the other side of town. But no, since we gave him the heads up on that a month and a half ago, and November 1st was like the first month of that. Yeah, I mean, like, again, that's why it's nice that I've got kind of that in-house management. He knows what everybody else in the block is renting at. So he's just like, oh yeah, these guys are renting at this and this is renting at this. So, you know, he's kind of got that inside scoop. Okay. So this is where I pulled one of my slides, you know, from the Investing in Challenging Times chat that I did this time last year. Because I always like try to make some of these points of emphasis. The reasons not to buy are always clear and right in front of us. You know, right now, if you turn on the news and they're talking about real estate, all they're talking about is how high the interest rate is. That's all they talk about. So everybody's like, oh, I probably shouldn't buy. But the reasons to buy are usually not clear until 1 to 2 years from now. And this is why so many people wait to take action and don't take action. All right. And I might have even done this. Oh, good, I did. This is also from the Investing in Challenging Times, and I put this in here. In 2008 to 2012, properties, when I bought that one in 2011, everybody now thinks I'm a genius. But back then, everybody was like, what are you doing? Don't you know that property is going to be worth less next year than it is right now? Don't buy it, right? That's what everybody was saying. But now I look like a genius. 2013 to 2017. Oh, missed your window. Just wait for the next decline. You know, you waited. But I bought properties during that window, and now I look like I'm a genius. 2018 to 2019. Oh, market corrections coming. It's been too good for too long. You know, just wait for it to decline. 2020. Tenants aren't paying rent. Don't buy now. You're not going to have any cash flow. No one's paying. Who knows when they're going to start paying again? 2021. Prices are way too high. You have to put in way above ask to get these investment properties. There's no way it's worth that. And this is why it was a good idea. 2008 to 2012. If someone could go back and tell you now, like, hey, properties, this is the lowest you're ever going to see properties in your lifetime, period. This is the lowest competition you're going to see in your lifetime. You have to buy right now. But no one knew it at the time. 2013 to 2017. Hey, prices are low. Good. There were some good financing options at that time. I look at some of the loan packages I was getting, and they were doing some creative stuff to get people in the game. 2018 to 2019, we had a good track record going. Why did we talk ourselves out of, had a good thing going? I mean, if I could do it all over again, 2018, 2019, I should have bought, those were the 2 years I didn't buy anything. I should have bought so much stuff and then just refinanced it all in 2021. But we didn't know that. You know, 2020, hey, tenants not paying is motivating sellers, and interests are at record lows. And 2021, interest rates are at record lows, and rent prices are going up quickly. You know, so those are the reasons to buy. But no one's ever telling you that now. So why is right now a good time to buy? We don't know for sure. But I think it's because competition is way down. Some sellers are motivated because they think that they might have already missed the window, that they've got to sell now, and they might sell it for a little bit less than what they would have earlier this year. And there's still a lot of buyers out there who, well, doesn't cash flow because they're looking at it completely at 20% down. It doesn't cash flow. Well, therefore I shouldn't buy it. Well, then put more down, do something creative. All right. So yeah, so this is the part where I take questions from you guys. Do you have any other questions on the deal deep dive or anything else we've talked about?
I know a lot of people wish they would have moved back here.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, even some people, they wait for like the deal of the century. Like, oh, I'm crunching the numbers. I haven't found a deal good enough. I haven't found a deal good enough. But the reality is, an okay deal right now is better than the slamming deal 2 years from now, because you get an average deal right now. By the time that other person gets the slamming deal 2 years from now, you have 2 years of equity. You have 2 years of cash flow. You have 2 years of experience. There's so many great benefits to getting in. So, I'm a big believer in buy early, buy often. And, it took me in my teaching career, I think it was at the end of my second year of teaching that I was able to purchase that condo. It took me 7 years to purchase my first rental property. And then I was already doing the math at the time. It was going to take me 5 to 6 more years to buy rental property number 2. I was just really fortunate that somebody accelerated me by purchasing something I didn't want to sell and gave me a good price for it. But yeah, when I look back now, it's not the cash flow. It's really the buying and holding and using and utilizing the equity you have in the property.
With the teacher income that you had at the time, what budget strategies would you give somebody an advice to save to?
Yeah. So like when I first bought that condo, I remember, even before I bought the condo, I was, like I said, I stayed in like the lowest cost apartment I could find in Verona. It was like, in looking back, it was not a very nice apartment. It was in Verona. It was not a very nice apartment. It was very small, but it was the lowest price. It was close to my commute was really low. I didn't have to spend a lot of money on gas. you know, I think a lot of people envision, you know, oh, investment real estate, you've got a boat, you're on the beach, drive a fancy car. You know, this time last year, I bought a new car. Up until then, I was making, you know, 5-6 times what I used to, like as a real estate agent, I was making 5-6 times a year than what I was as a teacher. Plus I was making double of what I made as a teacher off of the rental properties. And I was still driving a 2013 Hyundai Elantra, you know? So, you know, like I said, I didn't really do much life stuff, but, you know, I do a little bit more now. My wife is the one that kind of nudges me to, you know, living our best life. So she nudges me to do things from time to time, and get me out of that comfort zone. But yeah, I mean, now the way I look at it is I invested so much, time and so much discipline over the years that like now I feel like I do deserve to treat myself a little bit. But that's the biggest thing. Like when I went to the condo, I remember I used to have so much money left over at the end of the month for like paycheck and rent paid. I was like, oh, I have like, oh, my bank account just grew by this much. And when I bought the condo, between my mortgage payment and my condo fee, I just remember get to the end of the month, I'm like, boy, I didn't really put that much extra in the bank. So as I kept making more as a teacher, I didn't change. Yeah, I just kept my savings habits the same as when I was barely making it.
That's good.
Yeah, and so
mix out what's what needs.
Yeah, but anyway, any other? Yeah.
A little bit outside of what you're talking about, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on what you're going to do when you stop. What's your exit strategy for capital gains at the very end?
That's a really good question. So, I mean, I'll probably do another session on this. So, I mean, that's actually my target market right now, is finding people that own properties outright and working with them on a strategy to, you know, as a win-win. So like I said, I'll probably do a whole other session on this, and hopefully I'll have like another example. But that last property I bought, so going back to I sent all these mailers out, and I got the first round went out and I only had 2 calls. The second round went out, I had like 6 calls. And some of those people were mad at me because I never called them back because I was so busy with the 24 unit. I just didn't have the time, and I should have followed up. Maybe would have got a listing out of one of those 6. But I just, you know, didn't have the time. The last call that I got ended up turning into a deal too. And that was a seller finance deal. They were basically looking for somebody that they could trust. They Googled me. If you Google me, you'll see, like, you know, you'll see all this, you know, like you'll see a lot of stuff. Like, you know, I was a teacher for a long time. I'm still the head boys track coach at Verona. You know, you'll see that I'm an Olympic enthusiast. And I go to a lot of the summer games. You know, there's, you know, so they're like, oh, this guy's not going anywhere. And so they called me up and they said, hey, we got this 2-unit, 300,000. It's a 2-bed, 1-bath on the main level. It's just an efficiency upstairs. It's kind of ish by East High School. And I'm just kind of like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, it's about, yeah, I'll probably sell in the MLS for 300K is what I'm thinking. And I'm not, you know, I'm thinking like, oh, okay, I'm just trying to get this person off the phone. And they're like, oh, by the way, we're really interested in seller finance. I'm like, oh, well, now I'm a little more interested. So got a really good interest rate, locked it in for 10 years, 30-year term or 10-year term, 30-year amortization. They're saving a boatload on their on how much capital gains they would have had to pay, because they stayed a low tax bracket for, you know, a handful of years, where they would have jumped up to a high tax bracket for 1 year and paid capital gains on all that. Instead, they kind of stay at a lower and get to spread it out. They'll save a lot of money. According to my accountant, just kind of did some napkin math, and he was like, oh man, you're going to save them a ton of money on capital gains. So my exit strategy will probably be to find someone like myself in another, 30, 40 years who'd want to do the same thing, and kind of exit other properties. But no, eventually, I mean, probably going to, as I said before, with Opportunity 2020, I will donate a pretty significant portion of my portfolio, so that the scholarship's sustainable, after I'm gone from this earth. So, so that's part of the plan as well. So, any other? Oh, we got a few. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Do you remember the name of the company that did the direct mail that pulled that list for you?
Oh, I think if I remember correct, REI Print Mail. Yep.
Are you just selling it out in the area of Aurora or throughout?
No, like, I mean, yeah, pretty much just it's by zip code. And so, yeah, it was pretty much Dane County is what it went out to. Most of the responses were downtown, and they wanted an exorbitant amount of money. Like, oh yeah, if you'll pay me enough, I'll, I mean, that's part of the calls you get too. It's like, oh, well, that's not what I'm looking for. And East Side, that was the majority was East, North, and downtown. I'm not sure if I got a single call on the West Side. I don't think I got a single call in any of the suburbs. So, yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the conversation with that owner related to seller financing? And
I'll probably get more into that when I'll do a session just on that.
oh, just on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do one on just that. Yeah. Hoping to get another one done before that, so I have more than one example.
What they consider a good return on their.
Yeah. Yeah. For them, there was more for them, it was more the tax avoidance was more important than the interest rate. Yeah. So.
You also bought the properties you didn't develop like your own.
No, I've never built an apartment building. No, have not done that.
Have you thought about doing it? Considering this as a portfolio, you do that?
I haven't really. There was one part there at one point, I think it was probably 2019. I don't know how many of you, I know Francine, you were investing at that time, but I'm not sure how much you were paying attention to that. There was these 2 single family houses on very large plots of land on the near east side. And the person that owned those 2 properties, like, went to Madison, went to the community, went through the process, probably a 2, maybe 3-year process, came up with plans that were approved for a 20-ish unit apartment complex to go there, and then still keep the 2 houses there, which you could keep renting, like which was what he was doing. Yeah, everything was set to go. It had a pretty big price tag. Already had quotes from 2 different companies to build it. It was all teed up. And I would have had to sell a couple of properties to make it happen. I didn't want to do it at the time. And in hindsight, no one ended up buying it. In hindsight, it was probably a good thing because, it was like literally COVID the next year, and then the supply chain, and who knows how much it would have cost to end up building it. But I with all that time and energy spent, I'm only disappointed that somebody didn't do it. I wish somebody wouldn't do it. I'm glad I wasn't the person to do it though. But yeah.
How's your crystal ball? Like,
On what?
rents are going up and going up and up, and some Madison's just mecca people are coming in. You just see that like going on. People are cashing out of Boston and coming here or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I see so much building going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I go down Monroe Street, and all of a sudden there's another one built.
Yeah. I mean, I live in downtown Madison, so I literally watch there's like my building shakes all day because they're literally knocking down the building next to me to build the next high rise. I see one completed probably from my window. I can watch one get completed about every 4 to 6 months, just from my window.
Pretty high rents too, and all that.
Yeah. So then,
Just keep on going. Is it still great, or-
yeah. So, I mean, there's a huge inventory shortage for both housing and for rentals in Madison. You know, if you think about it, you know, I'm sure it was beautiful at the time they built the Capitol in the middle of the isthmus, or on the edge of the isthmus. But the reality is, you know, that makes it the land even harder to get, is the fact that, you know, everybody's trying to live as close to this little splice of land as you can. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to predict what will exactly happen. I just think it's hard. There's limited scenarios that are realistic where rent prices go down. You know, I think it's possible that if they keep going at the pace they're going and building, I mean, if you parked out on this side, you saw they're building like another very large apartment building right outside our office here. You know, eventually I think they might catch up to the demand, but it'll be difficult. And then, is, you know, once one building sees that this group is getting this for rents, well, that, I mean, it kind of pushes everything up, you know? So, you know, so obviously I know I can't get as much as, you know, these Lake Point ones are 8-minute drive away from downtown. I know I can't get as much as those, but like, it's just that, you know, if you're getting a 2-bed 1-bath for, you know, $4,000, well, the ones that are just off the square are trying to get 3,500, and then the ones that are just a little further out from that are trying to get 3,000. And, you know, it just
Closer to the square is better. Obviously.
Yeah, or campus. Yeah, campus is really rough right now because the interesting dynamic that was there was the rental market was actually down for the first year of COVID, because people were like, oh, well, I'm going to take a gap year, or I'm going to take a semester off, or I'm going to stay at home instead of living on campus. And then what ends up happening is the next year, okay, your regular freshman class that you were expecting is going to come in, and then all these people that took a gap year come in all at the same time. And now you have like this, you know, and I don't know if it was significant, but even a 5%, 8% bump on the student population for that 1 year and for the housing for that 1 year was just enough. And it like, you know, hey, it was already low inventory. Now it's low inventory with like a higher demand, and it just pushed everything up. Like, I just remember at one point thinking, oh, I'll never buy anything over in the Vilas neighborhood again, only to be, oh gosh, they're getting $800 per bedroom now. And then like to hear this year, they're getting like $1,000 per bedroom right now.
Do some research on that, where the rents are going up and what neighborhood.
Yeah, you just kind of hear things from people, you know, like, oh, like, you know, we're getting this or we're getting that. Okay, you all have surveys, and this is how we're going to do the drawing in a little bit. So please put your name, fill out if you haven't already, hopefully. And we will do a drawing here in a little bit.